Tonight, all suspects accounted for. Police make a last arrest after a wild week. Canada-wide warrant. Grand Prairie man is wanted for sex with a minor. And staffing shortages. Northern Health explains what they're doing to fix it. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us. Well, it's been a harrowing 7 days in Dawson Creek. 4 separate shootings, one of which ended in a murder charge. And now CJDC-TV News has learned the final suspect has been arrested. Sources say police in Hythe, Alberta have arrested a person they allege shot at police last week. Neighbors say early last Friday morning, 4 shots were fired at this house on 119th Avenue. A car sped off, followed by the sound of broken glass. Police found the abandoned vehicle. After bringing in the K-9 unit, 2 suspects were arrested. Now, police were still looking for a third suspect who they say fired shots at officers. That suspect was arrested on outstanding warrants in Alberta. So far, no charges have been filed in the shooting. CJDC-TV News has learned the name of the suspect, but we are choosing not to release it until the person is brought back to British Columbia and charged. 2 other suspects were arrested at the scene. Jesse Bujold is facing 1 count of flight from police and careless use of a firearm, while Jasmine Vigfusen is also facing 1 count of a careless use of a firearm. It's believed that all suspects in all 4 shootings have now been arrested. The police have released a photo of a Grand Prairie man who's wanted on a Canada-wide warrant. Justin Radcliffe is accused of sexually assaulting a minor, then publishing the image of that assault. In July of 2022, Radcliffe was arrested. Now, police saying the 45-year-old failed to appear for court and Mounties are unable to find him. Radcliffe is facing a number of charges, including sexual assault and the possession of child pornography. He's known to frequent Falkland and Kelowna here in British Columbia. If you have any information on his whereabouts, you are being asked to contact the Grand Prairie RCMP. Northern Health addressing staffing shortages in Peace Region hospital diversions tonight. The health authority now saying things are improving despite 3 service interruptions this month. Jeff Cunha spoke with the VP of Clinical Operations and has the details.
We put in place a number of priority planning activities to help address what the actual underlying issue is, which is the shortage.
Promising words from Northern Health today following 4 years of chronic staffing shortages at Peace Region hospitals. The issue reaching a breaking point last year when there were 25 diversions in Chetwynd, double-digit interruptions in Dawson Creek, and in a single week last July, Fort St. John saw their ER closed for 5 consecutive nights. But now the health authority assuring the tide is turning.
We've recruited 900 net new employees. To the north, 450 of them were nurses. So we're seeing the nursing shortages decrease.
Those nurses distributed across northern BC. However, the health authority couldn't provide exact numbers on net nurse gains in the Peace Region, only that they are being tracked.
There are still unintended diversions, short notice sick calls that come in, people for whatever reason who are unable to report to work. And it may result in a closure, but they are far less now than they were prior.
In 2021, former Health Minister Adrian Dix said he was open to an independent audit of Northern Health, contingent on a few things being done first. One of them, a change in hiring practices.
How we're onboarding people, what programs we're offering to try to get more local people who are already connected in the community and give them the ability to do the training.
The minister then backtracked his stance on an audit before leaving the position following an NDP cabinet shuffle post-October's provincial election. Sonata says recruitment and training remains ongoing. The $30,000 incentive program, retention bonuses, and training incentives are still in place. Northern Health to follow through with an agreement with the BC Nurses Union to have nurse-to-patient ratios in place within the next few years.
That will mean we need to recruit even more nurses because this is going to be a large influx of healthcare workers into our system.
However, it's not a promise that the diversions will stop.
We can always get better at how we do things, and that is something that we're looking at internally.
But a step in avoiding them.
The entire Northern Health family and team is working to ensure that we mitigate every closure
Although Northern Health says they're doing everything they can to avoid hospital diversions, it couldn't have come at a worse time. Nearly 150 nurses, many of them from Northern Health, attending a rally in Vancouver today. They are demanding improved working conditions by having staffing shortages and safety issues addressed. Zanata saying she hears their concerns and retention remains a top priority. In Fort St. John, Jeff Cunha, CJDC-TV News.
BC's ombudsperson says he's satisfied the provincial government has fixed a problem that shortchanged caregivers of children with disabilities to the tune of more than $1 million. But as CTV's Abigail Turner reports, advocates say there's still one key piece of funding being withheld from families.
More than 250 families in BC now receiving vital checks in the mail.
We've seen the difference it makes in families' lives.
A difference of about $264 per child into the pockets of kinship caregivers of disabled children after BC's watchdog found the province was holding on to federal funding 3 years ago.
Obviously, for a family raising a child with disabilities, that's a really important contribution.
The majority of children being raised in kinship care, those families are living right at or below the poverty line.
The ombudsperson says 3 out of his 4 recommendations have been implemented. The remaining, that BC work with Ottawa to address other inequities in the system.
We're disappointed that the ministry has not done that work with Canada yet, and we haven't seen any change on the federal front.
According to advocates, issues around the Canada child tax benefit still prevents many kinship caregivers from being able to claim them as dependents.
Not only are these families denied the $6,000 in benefits that all other families in BC receive, but their children are unable to receive other benefits where CCB is actually the eligibility criteria. So there's a whole slew of benefits that are tied to this.
According to the province, work is underway to address the concerns.
I am pleased to report that we have brought this up twice to the Federal Minister of Families and Children and Social Development, and will continue to do that.
While the money is important, both advocates agree it comes down to providing the best quality of care.
It all comes down to the child. They do everything for the child, and that despite the difficulties that they experience, they would do it all over again.
Abigail Turner, CTV News, Vancouver.
A bit of a bizarre story to tell you about tonight. BC's man obsession with finding the Sasquatch has led to quite the contentious divorce. According to a recent decision handed down in BC Supreme Court, an unnamed 57-year-old man's repeated hunts for a Sasquatch is the reason why he's not entitled to spousal support. The couple separated in 2020 after the wife found out he went on one of these searches with his ex-girlfriend. Well, he tried to claim spousal support from her, saying he was injured on one of the trips and that left him unable to work. But the judge didn't buy it because the man had since gone on multiple camping, fishing, and Sasquatch hunting trips. The federal government is loaning $1 billion to Canada Post. The money, it's intended to help the Crown Corporation continue operating amid what officials are calling significant financial challenges. Canada Post will receive the money in repayable funding through the 2025-26 fiscal year. It'll be provided on an as-needed basis to pay non-discretionary obligations. But the Crown Corporation is insisting the loan will not solve its structural issues. Federal officials say it's a needed financial bridge while Canada Post works with Ottawa on long-term changes to ensure its viability. Political leaders are urging us to buy Canadian. It's in response to the threat of steep tariffs being promised by Donald Trump. But experts say that's easier said than done. Premier David Eby has encouraged British Columbians to buy Canadian products, but this agriculture expert says there are regulations preventing processing plants for produce being built on BC farmland. She's calling for change to make BC less reliant on our suddenly unfriendly neighbor to the south.
It's a great idea. And the one challenge, of course, is that it's winter. And a lot of our processing is done elsewhere because of the red tape around our processing industries. So it's a great idea, but the government needs to immediately fix the processing situation in BC.
Justin Trudeau reacting to Trump's statement yesterday in Davos, Switzerland. Trump repeated his offer that if Canada becomes an American state, it won't face tariffs. Trudeau saying that's unacceptable. And Canadian builders are concerned tariffs will affect the lumber supply chain just as much as COVID-19 did. They say without exports, lumber supplies may have to charge a lot more locally. Softwood lumber prices are already high and lumber is in demand on both sides of the border. That's thanks to a housing crisis. Despite claims by President Trump, builders say Canadian imports account for a quarter of all American lumber. If it gets more expensive to ship, it'll mean companies have to recoup costs somewhere. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is detailing how he would retaliate to U.S. tariffs if he were Prime Minister.
And I would target products and services that A, we don't need, B, we can make ourselves, and C, that we can buy elsewhere so that we maximize impact on the Americans while minimizing impact on Canadians.
In a sit-down interview with CTV Atlantic, Poilievre said he'd pass an emergency tax cut on work investment, making things in Canada, energy and home building. He also called for more free trade between provinces and new pipelines to increase exports overseas. And Donald Trump had more harsh words for Canada again today, this time claiming Canadians would have better health care coverage if the country were to become a U.S. state. And as Andrew Johnson reports, that's not all he had to say.
This isn't the first time we've heard Donald Trump claim Canada would be better off as America's 51st state. Now he's suggesting Justin Trudeau has admitted Canada couldn't survive without the U.S. propping it up.
I asked him what would happen if we didn't do that, if we didn't subsidize Canada. He said we'd be a failed nation. And I said, then you should be a state.
The president made the comments this morning in North Carolina, where he's visiting communities affected by Hurricane Helene. He went on to claim Canadians would appreciate an American existence, paying lower taxes, and yes, benefiting from improved health care.
The Canadian citizens, if that happened, would get a very big tax cut, tremendous tax cut, because they're very highly taxed. And you wouldn't have to worry about military. You'd have better health coverage. You'd have much better health coverage. So I think the people of Canada would like it, if it's explained.
People we spoke to today are saying no thanks.
I think as Canadians, we're very proud to be who we are,
The man is a maniacal dictator, and there's nobody stopping him because everybody's so afraid of him.
Leave us alone. We're fine. We're good.
One expert believes targeting Canada is low-hanging fruit for Trump that pleases his base.
They like to see Donald Trump fight. They like to see Donald Trump go after his perceived enemies. And Canada, I think, is someone that he believes he can bully and he can beat up on.
This is all happening as Canada prepares to retaliate to the tariffs Trump has suggested he will slap on Canadian goods starting just over a week from today on February 1st. Andrew Johnson, CTV News, Vancouver.
And staying with Donald Trump, the U.S. president confirmed reports today that Dr. Anthony Fauci has lost his federal security detail.
When you work for government, at some point your security detail comes off. And, you can't have them forever.
Trump also telling reporters that he would not feel responsible if something were to happen to Fauci. The doctor was a key advisor to Trump during the COVID-19 pandemic. Fauci grew critical of Trump as he tried to undermine public health guidance. He faced regular threats and had for several years federal protection. Hamas has named the 4 Israeli hostages it says will be released tomorrow under the ceasefire deal. The 4 women are all soldiers who were abducted from a military base near Gaza during the October 7th attacks. Israel is expected to release 200 Palestinian prisoners. This will be the second exchange since the ceasefire agreement went into effect last weekend. And hurricane-force winds slammed Ireland and parts of the United Kingdom today as millions were told to stay home. This video was taken by a woman in Glasgow as her garden shed was ripped apart, and that's just one small example of the damage. Storm Iowan destroyed buildings, uprooted trees, and left hundreds of thousands of homes and businesses without power. Wind gusts in Ireland hit 183 kilometers per hour. That's the strongest winds that country's seen since the Second World War. All right, please do stay tuned. I'll be right back with a look at your weekend weather, but as we head to break, here's a look at today's closing market numbers.